Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and in this video, going to do a head-to-head with the Ardbeg Uigeadail Islay Single Malt Scotch Whisky and the Highland Park Cask Strength Highland Single Malt Scotch Whisky. So, two different islands, Islay and Orkney, two different peating methods. Ardbeg gets their peated barley from Port Ellen at 55 ppm. Highland Park peats their own barley, that is the barley that's peated, and then they source the unpeated barley. So about 20% of their barley is peated, around 30 ppms. So it makes up 20% of the barley, and the rest is unpeated. So 100% of the barley is peated, and only around 20% of the barley is peated. So they have a mix of peated and unpeated. And they're using local peat from Orkney. So a different oceanic influence, and as well as heather with Orkney versus Islay. Now, in terms of the strength, one is cask strength at 63.3% alcohol by volume. Some of the newer releases are even higher. I've seen some of the, this is a batch number 1, I believe it is, and some of the newer ones are actually like 64.4%, so even higher ABV. The Uigeadail is 54.2% alcohol by volume, and it's a mix of bourbon cask and sherry cask, whereas the Highland Park, it says seasoned sherry cask. Seasoned sherry cask. I'm not gonna rant. I'm not gonna rant in this video. You know, there's just so many different ways, using different verbiage and terminology, you can kind of BS things, and it just irritates the tar out of me. I mentioned in a previous video about using American oak and European oak. It's a meaningless term if you're not telling me what the previous contents were. Man, if you're not telling me it's bourbon or sherry, whatever, it's a meaningless term. Well, seasoned. What does seasoned mean? Well, number one, we know they're not getting sherry casks out of a Solera. All right, those would be really, really expensive. So essentially, as far as we know, is Edrington Group, which owns Macallan and Highland Park, they're sourcing their casks from a bodega. They fill them up full of sherry, spend a certain amount of time in there, and then that sherry goes out. Whatever the bodega is that they're getting the sherry from are selling that sherry. Probably some cheap ruby sherry. I don't know. So they have seasoned the cask. Enough has soaked in to where the cask is at where they want it, and then they're going to put their spirit in it. Alrighty, let's get into this. So both are non-age statements, so we don't know how old they are. I really like both of these whiskeys, and I'm really, really looking forward to this. And I'm looking forward to, after I record this video, I'm going to kick back and spend more time with it, doing a side-by-side comparison. Because I know these whiskeys really, really well, I'm really anticipating what I'm going to perceive the whiskeys. But there is an interesting experience, and if you aren't in the habit of doing side-by-sides of very similar profile whiskeys or comparable whiskeys, you can have in your head the aromas and flavors based on previous experience with the whiskeys. But then when you try them side by side, there's something about the way the whiskeys play off of each other that you perceive them quite differently. There will be things, by contrast, that you'll pick up that you didn't previously pick up. So right away, Ardbeg is a typical sort of muddy character to it. Getting chocolate, interwoven smoke, a lot of dark chocolate, chocolate-covered raisins, fudge, vanilla, and just a hint of spice. Highland Park cask strength. Everything's more acute, more precise. The aromas in the Ardbeg are broader, whereas these are much more focused. More spice is prominent. more vanilla. It also has a chocolate character, but different. Dried black fruit notes. Whereas with the Ardbeg, I was getting chocolate covered raisins. The sherry cask is standing out much more distinct and separate from the smoke. The smoke also comes across more as barbecue, whereas the Ardbeg comes across more as chocolate. But really, really nice interwoven barbecue spices, dates, figs, raisins, and this is more chocolate covered raisins, fudge, and earthy character, and nowhere near as much spice. Nowhere as near as much spice. I want to say that's exactly from memory, what I was anticipating. Highland Park tends to have just a lot of spice that really pops. All right, let's go on the palate. By the way, let's get to the visuals. Both are non-chill filtered. Kind of copper in color on the Ardbeg, slight golden. Almost identical with the Highland Park, perhaps a bit shinier, a little bit brighter. On the palate with the Ardbeg. Big punch of flavor, intense, rich, concentrated, chocolate covered raisins, really heavy smoke, slight spice on the back end, vanilla, caramel, fudge. The nose is confirmed. Everything get on the nose, I get on the palate. It's sweet up front, dries a little bit towards the back end, has a really nice round mouth coating feel, and a really long, smoky, slightly ashy character to it. Really, really, really nice. Let's try to get a little bit of water. Highland Park. Now, wow. Obviously, higher ABV. Highland Park, I'm really glad I started with the Ardbeg, because if I started with the Highland Park, I might be having challenges even tasting the Ardbeg. The Highland Park, intense spice, really focused more down the mid palate. Ardbeg is much more rounder. I don't want to say creamy, but a more round in your mouth coating feel. The Highland Park comes much more down the center of your palate. Intense spice, really, really focused. Barbecue notes, figs, dates, raisins, a little saltiness. I would say both of these have a little saltiness, but it's like an intense barbecue rub. Both of these have a really long finish. Highland Park is a little drier on the back end, a little bit more tannic. That means that astringency and that drying feeling in your mouth almost makes like your lips and your mouth pucker. And a super long, spicy finish. These are both awesome whiskeys. These are absolutely fantastic, superb whiskeys, but also very different. I think they're both reflective of where they're from. Orkney versus Islay. Definitely different in their approach and use of cask. I think basically Highland Park uses wet sherry casks, more or less. Ardbeg, the sherry isn't piercing through up the center of the palate. It's much more interwoven with everything else. So this is a heavier sherry punch and much more central in the palate, much more focused. It's sharper is another way to think of this, whereas this is more rounded and intermingled and everything's more developed and mixed, whereas this has more distinctive notes that are separate from each other, that are delivered differently, just even across the way it hits my palate. Score-wise, I think these are both fantastic. You know, this one's been open for a while. It's down to here. The Uigeadail is right about here. I just ordered another bottle. I'll be picking it from a local store on Tuesday in a few days. It's right here. It says due for another bottle. Obviously, whiskeys change as they open up in the bottle. They change as they open in the glass. They both had plenty of aeration to really fully express themselves. Score-wise, you know, I had at least 90 points, you know, somewhere in that range. Absolutely superb. Which do I prefer? And they're both in my neighborhood under $100. This is going to be much more of a mood-driven thing, but I would say the whiskey that really stands out and makes itself known and has much more sort of in-your-face, upfront character to it is going to be the Highland Park Cask Strength. The one that is much more laid back, much more sort of mildly seductive and richer is the Ardbeg Uigeadail. This is a richer whiskey. This is a spicier whiskey. This is more barbecue. This is much more chocolate fudge or chocolate covered raisins character. So they're very, 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 very different. But absolutely superb whiskeys. What I'd like to know from you, if you have tried these both, and if you've tried them side by side, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And if someone was going to buy one or the other, I'd have to ask them what kind of profile you prefer, and I would probably lean towards the Highland Park Cask Strength. I think it's a little bit more challenging to find in a store. I think the Uigeadail is a little bit easier to find. So if it happens to be on the shelf and you can grab one, I would say, and you're only going to buy one or the other, I would probably go with the Highland Park Cask Strength. But either one of them, neither one of them are a loser. The Ardbeg core range, under $100. These are better than the committee releases they've had over the last few years. That don't spend $200-300 or whatever on these committee releases that they're putting out. Just stick to the core range. Either this one or the Corey get those. All right, that's it for this video. If you subscribe to this channel, I want to thank you very much. If you've not yet subscribed but you like watching my videos, I would ask that you subscribe and ring the bell to be notified for when I go live or post a video. And until next time, Slàinte. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out these other whiskey videos.